Welcome back to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and this is a series of programs I'm doing with my very good friend and co-host, Suzanne Ross, about her upcoming incredible conference, the Sedona Ascension Retreat, with some all-stars of our league, really, and we have one today, William Henry. So why don't you introduce William?
Well, I just adore William and admire and respect him so much. And I'm so blessed that he said yes for a third time to come to Sedona and be part of my Ascension retreat. He's clearly a legend and an expert on Ascension, starting with Ascension Keepers on Gaia TV way back in the day. And I know he's had other shows on Gaia since then. Of course, he's an art historian, an author, and just a prolific speaker, very well versed on the history of Ascension and even how Ascension is significant for us here during this time of a golden age. His books that I wanted to highlight are The Lost Secrets of the Watchers, Ascension, Resurrection, and Perfection. And William does talk a lot about perfecting the rainbow light body, The Secret of Scion, and the Judgment Day device. And so maybe we'll touch on each of those a little bit because that really seems relevant as well. So welcome, William. I'm so delighted you're here.
So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's just show people where the event's going to happen. You want to show that poster there, Suzanne, and how people see William plus some other incredible people like Anita Morjani, Matt Kahn, JJ, and Desiree Hurtak.
I was supposed to screen share, I guess.
Yes, it is a fantastic gathering of people at this event. Look, Bashar, Linda Moulton Howe, who I feel is the best UFO researcher, Maureen St. Germain. This is really an all-star cast, Suzanne. You've put together a great group of people. And this is March 8th to the 10th in Sedona, Arizona. So that is also, I want to actually ask William that first question. You can take this down about Sedona and talking about Ascension. Do you feel like a place like Sedona adds to the Ascension frequencies that people are building at this time?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Sedona is a gathering place for people from all over the world. It's sort of a kind of a dual Stargate, if you will, between Sedona and Cairo, the Great Pyramids. I mean, it really is of that sort of league where people come there, they have amazing experiences. It's extraordinarily beautiful. And it's just a transformative journey when you're there because you're connecting with super powerful energies. And anytime you're connecting with those energies, you're really connecting with yourself. And that's what makes the journey so wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, some people say the place doesn't matter and it's the inner journey, but I think we do get assistance from the energetics. So you've been doing this for a long time, and so much that and you transmit through the art, through the visuals. Where are we now? I mean, people have been talking about Ascension ever since the 80s. And so are we further along as a collective consciousness, or are we, back where we began?
I definitely think we are. We're experiencing challenges, which were anticipated because Ascension is synonymous with transformation. And this was something that, as you mentioned, Alan, since the 80s, people have been talking about an acceleration and even a bifurcation that was going to happen as we got closer to the millennium. Then we were looking towards the 2012 date as a moment of transformation, and people began to realize that wasn't a moment, it was actually an extended time period, which we're in now. And the highlights of the prophecies, if you will, about the ascension / transformation was that there would be a bifurcation, that some of us would go in a different direction. And maybe back in the 80s, we weren't quite sure what that parallel path might be. But now it's very clear that it has to do with AI and transhumanism, that people are beginning to embrace that. Spiritual teachers, Deepak Chopra, for example, is a huge advocate of AI and merging humans with artificial intelligence. I think it's the stupidest thing we've ever conceived, but that's just my opinion. And so when we're talking about this time, we're looking at people saying, oh, Ascension, that really just means dropping my body and going and living in computer simulation in Mark Zuckerberg's black box in his backyard in Cupertino, California, or something. And that's really being pushed on, especially the younger generation now. And then some of us are saying, hey, wait a minute, no, it's not about that. It's about retaining our organic selves, being true humans, awakening the latent spiritual capabilities within us, and recognizing we are the technology and we don't need to be augmented. We don't need to have Elon Musk's nanoparticles sprinkled in our neocortex. We don't need any more AI. We don't need anything than we already have within us. And so it's not that there's necessarily a huge competition that is happening here, but there is some back and forth. And that's, I think, especially the introduction and the acceleration of AI and transhumanism is a huge source of a lot of the weirdness in our world right now. And people are confronting that every single moment of our lives right now.
Well, do you think that has been input into this culture by the matrix that wants to keep people at this lower frequency and disconnected?
Well, ultimately, I just happen to, after 20 years of research and looking at AI and listening to the advocates of AI, I've come to the conclusion that it's a demonic technology, and it's there to challenge us. It is there to prompt us to recognize who we truly are as people. And for the first time in human history, we actually have a predator. And we haven't ever had that, or at least not in the last 10,000 years, but now we do. And so this is going to force humanity to kind of step up and say, hey, if we want to really attain the higher level of spiritual, mental, and emotional, and even physical greatness that we know we have within us, we now have a sparring partner, and we've got to recognize that that's what's happening.
Well, hasn't that always been there? There's always been forces that have suppressed, maybe the orthodoxy of churches and religions. They've always been the sparring partner, but it's different.
It used to be more mental. It used to be a concept. In medieval art, you would see these reptilian types of beings putting chains around people. And that was a mental construct. There weren't literally reptilian beings with iron chains that were going after people. But today it's different because the chains are more real. They're not just mental. There are corporations and governments that want to silence opinion. They want to silence your ability to speak freely, to research, to make your own decisions about what you introduce into your body. And so it's at a much higher level and much more forceful level than I think in any other time in history.
So what do you suggest? Oh, wait, did you have a question, Suzanne?
Yeah,
go ahead.
and so listening to your book Ascension on Audible, and some of the other books that you've written, and some of the courses that you even offer, you reference segments out of the Bible, specifically Genesis. But on this topic, I'm just curious about whether you feel like some of what the book of Revelations is telling us is warning us about this.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've come to perceive the book of Revelation as perhaps our greatest navigational tool right now, because it is archetypal in its symbolism, and it can be applied to many different eras in history. However, the specific references to a technology, a mark of the beast forced upon people in order to buy, sell, and trade in a marketplace, that sounds like a lot like what's been happening recently, or at least the past several years in our world. And then additionally, forcing people away from God. I mean, God has been removed from the marketplace, from the political spectrum. Churches are closing virtually en masse. Where and it's the technology that's driving it, because it's anti-God, it's anti-human, it's anti-Christ. And we're recognizing that that's what we're dealing with. And I started paying attention just to what the advocates were saying about it themselves. These are the people that are developing this technology that are saying it's alien, it's demonic, it's an existential threat to humanity, even more than climate change. And we're now having to listen to that. And we've done it to ourselves. It isn't like it's coming, I don't think, from perhaps a demonic realm. It could be, but it most certainly is something that is here to challenge us. And that's part of what the book of Revelation describes is a challenge to humanity. And the good news is that the children of light win. There's a segment of the human population that rises and activates something that's referred to as the seal of God in the book of Revelation that transforms them and enables them to defeat this challenging figure, which was referred to as the beast in the book of Revelation. And so I take a lot of comfort in that. It's not a pretty scenario, because along the way, there's definitely this force that wants to mandate that certain things be introduced into our body in order for us to participate in society. And that is not ever a good thing. It always has to be a person's choice about what they want to do with and for their body.
So what is
the awareness around what the intentions are and what the side effects may be? And
yeah.
So what is the best way, William? These are all the things that are happening. So how do people, what do you take back their power and find the divine force within? What do you suggest?
Well, they have to look at their mystic anatomy. They have to begin to look at their body as this transformational tool, if you will, that has hidden capabilities within it that we all possess. And once we start to do these activations, which is what so many are people doing now with any of the meditation work, yoga work, I think for the first time in history, we have hundreds of millions of people that are practicing meditation, doing yoga, doing visualizations, all geared towards transforming them. We use a term like raising our vibration, which is sort of a nebulous term, but it feeds into this idea of becoming something more. And the term that the ancients used was the perfection of the human race. And that just simply means to become more whole, more holy, and more complete, and indeed more compassionate. And that is really where it all starts, is with the compassion and recognizing that love really, as trite as it might sound to some people, really is the answer. And we have to be willing to love our neighbor as ourselves, as we're told in the commandment.
But, go ahead. No,
Can I ask about the Stargates on the planet? I know that in your presentation, you talk about Jesus's Stargate, and it's one of the bylines of your book, The Secret of Sion. And you mentioned it in the last event that we had back in March. Are there Stargates on planet Earth? Are there man-made Stargates, like artificial time warps, like J.J. Hurtak talks about? And then are there natural Stargates?
Yeah, sure.
Activating now.
Yeah, because, simple steps. A Stargate is a connection between the heart of one star or sun to another star. It's a place on Earth where the energy of a star or star systems is present and perhaps even magnified. And it's also a transportation device. It can be an organic, a natural Stargate, or it could be man-made. And yes, I do believe there are both naturally occurring Stargates, transportation spots, vortexes. There are also man-made ones as well. Skinwalker Ranch has been proven now to be one such place in northern Utah. And people go to other places around the world where they experience energies that they think of as a natural Stargate. But also, it's important to recognize that our body itself is considered to be a stairway to heaven or a Stargate itself. So we need to look no further than what we're all sitting in right now, which is our biological human body, which was, according to many, many of the ancient stories, from the Atrahasis in Sumeria to the Egyptian texts, even the book of Genesis describes the body in mystic anatomical manners in which it's described as a functioning portal or a Stargate. And when I talk about Jesus's Stargate, that's mostly what I'm referring to. Is his body, my body, your body is the same, but he knew how to use it. And as we follow this path of the star walkers, as I refer to them, we too can learn to activate these capabilities within. This is the basis for the Tibetan rainbow light body tradition. It's the basis for all Ascension teachings. And I should mention that Ascension is not something new. It's not something that started in the 1980s. It started in the 80s, about 10,000 years ago. And it's something that humanity has been working on for millennia. And it appears that we are now coming to a place where perhaps because we have this extraordinary number of people on the planet right now that are all energetically activated and working together, perhaps unknowingly, we're coming to a place now where we're going to be able to tap into those resources. And there's wonderful teachers out there that are doing this kind of work. And it's tremendously exciting. But the thing is, we need more of it. We need not just tens of millions, we need billions of people to get on this path right now and choose to remain organic and choose to advance the human race in a conscious way.
That's great. You know, I had a teacher who claimed to be an ascended master, that it's easier for the body to ascend than it is to die. Our natural biological mechanism is to activate the biophotonic potential in the cells. So you agree with that?
And of course, traditional religion says ascension is something that happens only when you die. And you can maybe rehearse it in this life, but of course, all the esoteric traditions that run parallel to the traditional religion say, no, ascension is something you do while you're living. So what I did in my Ascension book is present a timeline, a chronology of some of the exemplars of this teaching and show people that they're part of something extraordinarily special and also intentional. We have guidance on this path, and we have to live up to that guidance, and that's part of our quest.
Right. Did you ever come across the teachings of Carlos Castaneda and the Toltec ascension techniques?
I have, yeah. In fact, I just got back from Egypt. I led a tour there, and I had a wonderful couple there that were long-term students of Carlos Castaneda, and they were just blown away by the Egyptian ascension teachings. They had no idea how absolutely complementary they were to what Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda had been presenting. So that was really exciting, because I would say something, they'd be like, "Oh my God, that's what Carlos says. Oh my gosh, that's what Don taught." It's like, yeah, it's ascension is not, it's not a Christian concept. It's not Islamic. It's not Jewish. It's not Sumerian. It's cosmic. It's the universal spiritual teaching, and this is why you can find it in so many similarities and connections between all of the earthly spiritual traditions.
Definitely. When I was studying Taoism, the Yellow Emperor ascended with his body, and like I said, Don Juan, Castaneda, I don't think ascended because he had too much self-importance. You know, that was part of, like, you have to get over self-importance if you're going to turn into light. Yeah.
A lot of, traditional religious people say, oh, those are just kind of stories. Elijah really didn't ascend into the heavens in a whirlwind, and Jacob, when he went up the ladder, that was just a dreamer. The ascension of Muhammad, no, that wasn't quite right. And Jesus, oh no, that certainly he never ascended either. But I think those stories are actually true, and historical evidence shows them to be true. And they're rungs on the ladder for us to ascend ourselves. They're all the way showers to demonstrate what is capable for all of us.
Well, the incredible. Go ahead.
Is there any similarity, since we're talking about the biblical interpretations and the spiritual beliefs? Is there any similarity between the rapture and ascension?
Well, ascension is, in my view, more of an intentional process. It's something you commit to. The rapture, as I understand it, is more of a spontaneous lifting up. In Christianity, the belief is that at a time of the second coming, the believers will all be raptured because they've been baptized and they're committed to the Christian church. And so that's kind of a counter possibility or counter way towards a more intentional ascension process, where you commit to this process of becoming more whole and more holy, with the end benefit being exactly the same as the rapture, It's just how you go about it. Jesus'
Right.
little brother James said, probably taught by his brother, that faith without works is dead. And the ascension process is really all about doing the work of transformation, of consciously working towards transforming an impure soul to a pure soul.
So I love that, Jesus left, I feel, and maybe you do that, the snapshot of that ascension, the Shroud of Turin, is a photograph of the body turning into light. Do you agree with that?
Totally, 100%. Yeah, I've had a couple of wonderful experiences visiting the Shroud of Turin, and I've not just personally invested in it by faith, but rather by the recent scientific study that's been done on it. It's absolutely conclusive that this was a dematerialization event. This was a human body that became like the sun and left that image, if you can call it an image, on the Shroud of Turin. I really like what's happened with the Shroud back to 2015, 2016. Pope Francis declared it an icon of love. And as an art historian, that was a major revelation to me, because I know that in Christian speak, the word icon has a specific meaning. An icon is a two-way mirror. It's a channel of communication. It's very different than an artifact, which was the term most commonly used in reference to the Shroud of Turin. It was a Christian artifact. If it's an icon, it's a living image. That image is capable of transmitting codes or frequencies, vibrations, and in terms of spiritual terminology, to anyone who perceives that image. It's through quantum entanglement as an avatar. Jesus can use that. He is literally physically present in the fibers of the Shroud of Turin, and is therefore capable of interacting with all of us energetically and on a conscious basis.
Well, I didn't actually see the shroud, but I went to the church in Turin, and where it's kept in this big kind of box, or, and I felt the energy, not even seeing it. And there's an image above that kind of coffin type thing of the face. And I took a picture, and this big orb showed up over the face there of Jesus. But the question I have is, yes, and I do think it is an ascension, a picture of ascension, but when Jesus came back, his disciples didn't recognize him. So what's your explanation for that when he returned?
That's a real mystery. I mean, in particular, Mary Magdalene goes into the garden, and Jesus manifests to her as the gardener. She mistakes him for the gardener. And when you read the Bible commentators, they say the reason she didn't recognize him is because she had been crying. And to me, that is the biggest load of crap. I mean, I can never imagine. Mary Magdalene was his chief disciple, probably his wife, certainly his koinona, his spiritual counterpart. Yeah. She would absolutely recognize him, and he's not appearing to her in disguise. This was a very carefully planned event. It wasn't a spontaneous event, I believe, as presented in the Gospels. The Essenes absolutely knew what they were doing. They had called in this high celestial being, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, that would show them how to put on their crown of salvation and their robe of unending light. This was like a mission. There was absolutely not a single part of it that was not planned or understood by the Essenes. So when the Gospels say that Mary Magdalene didn't recognize him, that to me is just like putting a veil over her, like referencing her as a prostitute and all that, to diminish her in the church's eyes, because they didn't want James, the brother of Jesus, or Mary Magdalene to be the successors of Jesus. They wanted Peter to be the successor. So they diminished or diminutized all of the disciples.
Well, my theory is, I don't know who knows if it's true, is that because the light body transforms the physical body, the body's different, and you could shapeshift into any form because you have that capability. So that might be why, because the body was made anew and fresh, that he may not have been recognized.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a possibility, but it's also very telling that he appeared as the gardener, because that is a very specific term throughout the Ascension and transformation teachings. All of the masters are referred to as gardeners. They're shepherds in terms of providing the wisdom. The sheep are the initiates. but the gardeners are also the ones that nurture the seed of God within all of us, the divine spark, and help it to blossom and to bloom. And it goes all the way back to the Sumerians, with the Anunnaki being referred to as gardeners and humans as trees. It's a very kind of weird line of symbolism, highly esoteric, but also informs us why he manifested as the gardener. Osiris to the ancient Egyptians was portrayed as the green man or the gardener. There's this motif from these ascended ones that they're nurturing a garden of souls, and that's some really important symbolism.
It's like fertilizing the seeds for the harvest.
Yeah.
Right.
In my Ascension book, I picked up on that thread a little bit and used the image of the acorn as a visualization tool for people to think of that the oak tree has no resemblance to an acorn and vice versa. And that's kind of where we're at in terms of our physical flesh and blood body. It's the acorn, the light body is the oak. And what we've got to do is find ways in order to connect with that future self, to retrain our brain. That's a term that we've been using a lot lately, to get our brains to connect with that part of ourselves and to visualize it and have a sense of what it's like once we're actually in our light body, and to begin to bring that into our present moment.
You know what I noticed, the commonality between a lot of these Ascension traditions, like in the Taoist tradition, in the Toltec, and maybe in the Jesus tradition, is the action of impeccability. You know, a Sadiq or Malki Sadek. The Sadiq is righteous, or people with integrity, like the Tao De Ching. The De is integrity, the way of integrity. And it's also, I would think, a way that someone like Jesus probably lived, with impeccability, integrity to himself and others. Did you ever pick up on that kind of connection?
Yeah, for sure. This idea of having to become like the righteous ones, that's a word that it's kind of misused in our culture now. We think of righteous people as usually being self-righteous, unfortunately. Right. But I think the impeccability, the righteousness, the perfection, these are terms that were used in all the Ascension schools. And what it ultimately comes down to me, is it has to do with the raising of our frequency. We have enjoyed this lag time between thought and action. And that lag time, I think in many people's experiences, is shrinking. And more our thoughts and our actions are becoming one. That's synchronicity. And that's why the impeccability and the righteousness is so important, because you want to make sure your thoughts are dead on exactly what you do want, not what you don't want, because you're going to manifest that.
Right. So that's one way. But do you think Jesus, I mean, I know you probably teach a course on this, or 2 weeks, or to lead the impeccable life, a sequence that will start to activate the vibrational shift in the body. What do you tell people? I mean, I know it's a whole thing you do, but what would you tell people here listening to start to activate that frequency?
The main thing is, I'll go back to the world's second oldest story, which is the Epic of Gilgamesh. Jesus quoted from it when he said, "Wide is the gate that leads to destruction, and narrow is the way that leads to life, and few find it." That is a direct quote from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was written 2,500 years before the time of Jesus. So how he got a copy of it, I don't know. Must have gone to Babylon and hit one of the libraries and read it. But the Epic of Gilgamesh makes a statement that, archetypically speaking, all of us are 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. If we think of divinity as symbolized by a circle, which it is, a circle is 360 degrees. So what Gilgamesh is saying is that we all start out at basically 240 out of 360. In every moment of our lives, we're doing things mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally that are reflective of our belief that we're at, say, 240. Some of us might be up at 270 or 290 or 300. To me, the Ascension game, if you will, is to go into your imagination and think of yourself. Let's say if you think of your 290 right now, think of what your life will be like when you're at, say, 310 out of 360. You'll be doing different things mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally than you're doing at 290. Some of those things are going to be really easy, and they're probably things you're procrastinating on doing. Some are going to be perceived to be difficult. But the idea is to start doing those things that you will be doing when you're at that higher frequency, and those difficult things will become easier. And that it's all individually specific. I mean, what I need to be doing or think I'll be doing at 310 and what you're going to be doing at 310 will be completely different. But there will be similar things that we'll be doing. And I'm sure it's going to have to do with diet. It's going to have to do with activation of our neurosecretory system and understanding how the pineal gland works and how it can release various secretions and hormones that can activate our consciousness, open up portals, enable us to perceive other realities. Those are very important things. But something else that people can do that's also extremely important, I think, on the ascension path is understand it, understand sort of the geography of what's happening here, that we come from somewhere else. We're temporarily inhabiting this realm, and we have an opportunity. We've been blessed with this vehicle. This is our Stargate. This is our stairway to heaven, and we need to learn to activate it and read these stories of various figures that ascended. Learn about the angelic beings that are involved. Learn about the higher realms that you'll be going to. And that's also going to start to really build this thought sphere around you and an understanding of what this path is ultimately all about.
Wow. Isn't it? Go ahead. You have a question, Suzanne? I can ask.
Well, it just reminded me of the ultra celestial realms that we're focusing on during the Sedona Ascension retreat. And so we have a panel about the extraterrestrials, but we also have a panel about the ultra celestials, William, and it's talking to near-death experiencers who have been on the other side with the angelics, and also J.J. Hurtak and Desiree talking about, his experience being, taken into the ultra celestial realms by Enoch into the presence of Metatron, and then how, like he said, we're being influenced more now by the ultra celestials. Mm-hmm. And so when you say that familiarity with those other realms, it reminds me of, how beneficial these near-death experiencers coming forward and describing their experiences on the other side as being pure love light and encountering Jesus and the angels can be for us, and an understanding of that.
Yeah, I can't think of really a more important subject for all spiritual questers to understand right now than this idea of these higher realms and ultra-terrestrial beings. And part of the reason why is because, and again, not to go into fear or negativity, but you do have a class of technology people out there that would argue that we just live in a simulated reality, and all this business about a kingdom of heaven or a pure land of Buddhism, that doesn't exist. That's just a figment of your imagination, that this is all the game, this is all there is, and when you're done, it's over. There is no continued existence. And I take that as a spiritual challenge that all spiritual people that have had near-death experiences and have had encounters with that ultra-terrestrial realm, we have to prove that to people now, because the simulation theorists have got their math, they've got their satellites and their science that are trying to say, that's just all ancient folklore and superstition. Y'all need to grow up. You don't have a soul. There is no God. There's just a programmer, and you're a non-player in this game here. You really don't matter. And that is a horrific worldview that is what's really driving a lot of this AI and transhumanism. The military believes this, Disney believes this, much of Silicon Valley believes this. They're promoting it to our children as if it's a fact. And Elon Musk is a major advocate of simulation theory. And I'm in touch with a lot of these guys, and they're all coming out of the woodwork now, wanting to talk about it. And I'm sitting at the table with them as a spiritual person, and that's why I'm there to say, well, wait a minute, you guys, I'm willing to have this conversation with you because it is the most important conversation on the planet right now. Because if they're able to eliminate God and eliminate religion and spirituality, which is what they're trying to do, and get our children and grandchildren believing that they're just meaningless players in a video game, that's a horrific scenario. But that's where we're at right now. And so when you're talking about the near-death experiencers and the ultra-terrestrials, they are the ones who are really leading this understanding or this opening that we have to know. We can't just believe anymore that there's a better life to come or a pure land. We have to bring that down into our present reality and show it to people. And that's what we're doing now.
Great. No, thank you for that. I totally support that and that vision, because everyone talking about it, oh, it's just a simulation we're in. That's disconnecting from the essence. It's a weird propaganda. Even people who think they're spiritual are calling it a simulation. And
I know. It's the book of Revelation again. This is the beast technology that you just live in a video game. If you can convince someone of that, what's the point of living?
Right.
And that's the real danger. That's why this is so insidious. And again, it's a major challenge, and we have to take it in that spirit and demonstrate that the spiritual path is the correct one.
So what you're saying is the stakes have just been upped. We've been coasting along. People have been talking about Ascension. That's a great idea. And now, and I think it's great that Suzanne's putting this together, we really have to do the work. I mean, now is the time where the gear shifts into 5, dimension, and the clutch is down, and we need to put our foot on the gas and just go. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, totally. Or take our foot off the brake, because
right,
if we are really being propelled along by something beyond our control.
So, there's still people. I think people are waking up a lot, and I think, and they're fighting these forces that are trying to, I get up and get lost in my phone sometimes for like a half hour. It's like, I don't remember anything. It's just brain mush. And it's another device to distract us from ourselves. And when I could have been meditating and getting more information by going inward than looking outward. So I think we just have to remind each other. But what do you suggest? What's like a personal practice I can do or someone else can do?
I take a walk every day and leave that behind and just look at the trees, look at the grass, notice the change of the seasons, and look at the sky, spend some time looking at the stars. This is another great reason to come to Sedona. It's always, for me, every time I've been to Sedona, it's sort of like a break in reality, because it is such an extraordinarily different and amazingly beautiful place, but it also clearly has this feeling of being a set apart place too. And so it gives you that break in your thoughts, and then you feel renewed afterward, and you feel regenerated. And that's something that's really important right now, is for everyone to find something. If it's, again, for me, it's as simple as taking a 45-minute walk every day and connecting with nature and being outside and just putting a break in between myself and this barrage of what is going on in our society.
Right. Suzanne also mentioned J.J. Hurtak, who I feel, he's a friend of mine, and I think a fantastic human being, actually had an ascension experience. Do you agree that would you call that ascension, what happened to JJ?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're around Dr. Hurtak, you are with a very special person who is seen a light and connected with a light in a domain that all of us ultimately will be able to go to, but he was like, there. And it's palpable when you're in his presence.
Yeah, and he's maintained that frequency. His whole life is dedicated to this sort of work, and they're such an inspiration to be around JJ and Desiree, because they're always working. I mean, I travel with them, and they are always they don't take a vacation.
And one thing I admire and have observed in being around them for over, I don't know, 10, 15 years now, is the positivity. that he exudes is so inspiring. It's a reminder, yeah, we all can do this. You just got to keep that compass needle pointed in that righteous and compassionate direction, in that positive direction. So it sounds trite, but you just can't afford the luxury of a negative thought. And he always reminds me of that.
Right. And they're like that, privately, they're always working towards the light, and he's bringing in new information. So I'm so happy he's going to be at the conference as well, Suzanne. And
me too. I'm a huge fan. Obviously, I just love her talks, and I feel so blessed that they invite me over to their home sometimes. And JJ will share teachings, and Desiree is just so lovely. And when they are on stage at my events, they just bring the house down. I mean, they engage us in some kind of chant. He's just so impassioned, and his passion, their passion, really translates into the audience, and he sort of generates this fervor, this passion for ascension that is just incredibly powerful. It's an activation and a transmission for sure.
I agree. Yeah.
So I'm excited about this weekend that will have all these activations, all these high energy people there. I mean, you've been talking about Ascension a lot, but anything in particular you're going to do in Sedona, William?
I haven't decided yet.
Okay.
I'm still reading some of the tea leaves. I like to read the room closer to the event. I don't have a specific talk that I give over and over and over again. So I have my general direction, but I'm always trying to tap into the audience and get a sense of what it is that they really need. It can be a single word. I don't often know what it is in advance, and that's part of the excitement of doing it for me. Is it's always a challenge in a way to do that. But I know I'll be inspired by this audience, just as I have by the past audiences as well.
Anything you have to say about, the world is at war, basically. I mean, anything you have to say about what's happening now in our times?
Well, ultimately, it's all good because the good guys win. This is a very trying time, and if people are reading current events in light of, as we discussed a moment ago, the Book of Revelation, it's very difficult and very challenging times. But I wrote a book in 2012 called The Judgment Day Device about exactly what is happening today, where you have it's a world war, but it's really a religious war. It's the Jews and Christians versus the Muslims is what it's about. And you have Iran and Hamas that are Shia, and they want to see the acceleration of chaos in our world so that their Messiah, the Mahdi, can manifest. And the Mahdi will be presaged by his prophet, who in Islam is Jesus Christ. And of course, Christianity is expecting the second coming of Jesus Christ. And you have the Jews don't believe the Messiah has arrived yet, but they believe the Messiah will be here when the Mahdi arrives. And all three of these messianic figures are symbolized by the same device. And this is what my book was about. And that device is the true Ark of the Covenant. It's not the one of the Jews. It's not the one of the Christians. It's not the one of Islam, although all three maintain that their prophet will be the one who will recover the Ark of the Covenant and take it to Jerusalem and stick it on the Temple Mount. And that, of course, is the whole backstory of the Armageddon scenario that we're in right now, World War III. And
what was the Ark, though? What is the Ark, an actual physical thing? I mean, according to you?
Yeah. According to the history that was left, it's something that will be brought over from another dimension. It's apported from other worlds and will be assembled. It's been disassembled and will be reassembled and taken to the Temple Mount. That is the prophecy of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And the ultimate benefit of this is that it's a free energy device. It's an anti-gravitational device. It is a tool for ultimate peace. And part of the reason I wrote the book, The Judgment Day Device, is because I had heard the then president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, stand before the United Nations in 2010 saying he's here to introduce an age of righteousness and perfection. And that, in fact, the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran had told Ahmadinejad that he's been in contact with the Mahdi, and the Mahdi said he will manifest in the Ayatollah's lifetime. And that means today, that is our time. And Iran has been actively pursuing this prophecy since before 2012, but it's been accelerating. And my sense was that, if Mahmoud Ahmadinejad or any other Shia leader or Muslim leader believes that the Ark of the Covenant is like what you saw in the Indiana Jones movie, and they try to bring something like that to Jerusalem, we know it's a fake, because what Steven Spielberg presented was not really the Ark of the Covenant. It is a popular conception of it, but it's really not the true Ark of the Covenant. And so I was saying in my book that, okay, if all three of these religions have a prophecy about this, and this is the end time goal, and this is the solution to all of our human problems, we need to know what this device actually is. And we have to simultaneously raise our self-esteem to say, we deserve as a race to have this miraculous, wondrous technology in our midst. And we need to begin to visualize that and the transformation in our world that this will bring. And this is what's bubbling up presently within the Middle East, is this race to recover this device and ultimately bring it forward. But again, that's part of what I was saying about the ascension process as well, is that we have to begin to visualize it for ourselves and understand its true nature in order to make sure that we get it right.
Wait, so all these three religions want the same thing, they're just going about it differently, you're saying, or
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Christians believe that the second coming will happen, and that Jesus will have a way shower. It was actually his brother James during the time of the Essenes. They called him the Rainmaker. This is the reason why in the Dead Sea Scrolls he's referred to this, is because he goes and assembles this device. It's Christ's throne. Most Christians have no concept or clue that Christ has a throne, and it was the original symbol of Christianity, nor do they realize that throne is the fully assembled Ark of the Covenant. And this is like understood by academics. And so the idea here is that they disassemble this device, and then they go and recover it as needed. And what I was saying is that Jesus' little brother James was called the Rainmaker, not only because he assembles this device, but it was a bit of a pun. Why was he called the Rainmaker? And the reason why is because his brother travels around in his ascension body, which is referred to as a cloud. And clouds, of course, bring rain. And the rain that they're speaking of is a higher frequency substance. It's like manna. It's a wondrous substance that suddenly engulfs the entire planet and raises consciousness and elevates the human race beyond fear, beyond jealousy, beyond hatred. All of the things that churn the military-industrial complex and the religions of the world, all of that suddenly gets transcended, and we're elevated or existing in this ascended state of being while in our physical flesh and blood bodies. And that's what this device does.
Well, do you think the Egyptians had this originally in the Grand Gallery in the Great Pyramid? Was it kept there?
No, I think it was down at Abydos. It's very clearly portrayed on the walls of the Temple of Seti at Abydos. It was in existence in the pre-flood times. It's what my research has revealed anyway. When Moses was trained in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, it was probably at Abydos, and the evidence shows that he was there, and he knew what the fully functioning Ark of the Covenant was, and that it's originally an Egyptian technology, but it wasn't Egyptian. This is the thing. It's a cosmic technology that was brought to Earth by these ascended beings, and they remove it from the Earth periodically, and they bring it back, reassemble it, utilize it. And we're in that time right now.
Was it kept in the Osiris in Abydos? Is that what
think it was. Yeah, I think that King Seti discovered it in the Osirion, which is the temple behind the Temple of Seti. They believe it's at least 10,000 years old. And his son Ramses II is the one who put these incredible depictions on the temple walls of, I call it the Osiris device. It's their resurrection machine. And what's so interesting about it is that at the same time that we were discovering this in 1905 at Abydos, J.P. Morgan was leading was funding the expedition to discover this lost technology. And at the same time that J.P. Morgan is funding this expedition, he's also funding Nikola Tesla in his wondrous technologies. And the reason why is because they interface. All of the Tesla technology ultimately drops out of this angelic device, if you will, or this cosmic device that King Seti had discovered, and I believe ultimately used in his own resurrection.
Right. You know, what's interesting about the Ark is that the Temple of Solomon, after Solomon, the whole Judaic Israel kind of country of 12 tribes breaks up and the Ark disappears from the Temple Mount. And that's what we're still looking for, that Ark that may have been interdimensional or may be brought to Ethiopia, like Graham Hancock says, or placed in Elephantine, which my tour guide thought, or maybe, yeah, like you're saying, just disappeared into the dimensions because it was going to fall into the wrong hands. So,
yeah, exactly. I mean, this is many texts described as the Babylonians text in the 6th century said, yeah, the angels came and took it, and they'll bring it back at a future time. And all of the prophecies of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam point to this device and its ultimate return to Jerusalem. And that's, again, the backdrop of what we're seeing here. This is why Iran is really egging on Hamas and trying to accelerate this chaos in our world, because that's the Muslim prophecy that the world will be in complete chaos before the Mahdi arrives. And so they have this belief that is counter to what you see in Shia Islam, is that if you, by accelerating that chaos, by stimulating it, then you can accelerate the appearance of the Mahdi.
Well, that's what the fundamentalist Christians are hoping for too. I mean, they're hoping for.
They embrace AI. The Southern Baptist Convention has embraced AI because of its eschatological implications. Eschatological implications refer to end time prophecy. They love AI because it's demonic and because it's the mark of the beast, and that means, yeah, Brother Jesus is on his way. If that beast is here, that means Brother Jesus is on his way. And I couldn't believe it when I'm reading the Southern Baptist Convention saying, oh yeah, we've decided we're giving into AI because we think it's ultimately going to accelerate the return of Christ.
But, you know, you've done all this work. So do you think that Ark is actually going to appear? You think we have to change first? I mean, I don't think it's going to be brought about by wars. I mean, what do you think?
No, I mean, I don't know for sure how it can be manifested, but I'm on it. Let me just say that. And I gave up doing this work about 10 years ago. There was just things that happened that maybe spooked me a little bit. Said, okay, I'm going to move away from looking for this device and talking about it. But now some new discoveries have been made, and I'm back on the case, and I'll hopefully have more to talk about it soon.
So will you bring the Ark to Jerusalem then?
It seems to me there's some kind of scripture in the Bible that says something to the effect of, when the Son of Man returns, he'll come back and sit on his throne. This is what we're talking about. The Ark of the Covenant is the throne of Christ. They call it the Edamatia, the empty throne. And this was kind of the novel discovery in my book that, see, when most people talk about the Ark of the Covenant, I really enjoy so many of the authors who do, but they focus on it as this simple golden box and they forget about all its other components. They don't even mention them. But these components were well known. They're the rod of Aaron, the flask of enlightenment,
of anointing oil, the tablets of the law, the book of light. These are the robe of light. These are all components that are utilized in conjunction with the full functioning Ark of the Covenant. And when you assemble all of those symbols that I just mentioned, which is what I did in my book, you get the throne of Christ. And because traditional Christians say, well, we don't have any use for the Ark of the Covenant. Mary is the new Ark. Jesus is our technology. We don't need any of those old relics anymore. But they don't have full understanding of the early Christian symbolism and what that throne is. But the throne of Christ is the Ark of the Covenant. And that's exactly what you're referring to, Suzanne, is that the believers will be gathered before the throne of Christ. And that means before the Ark of the Covenant.
Wow. You know what? Another interesting component is the chalice, right? The chalice. And when I was in northern Spain in a town called Gerona, there was a secret society there that is written about by in Foucault's Pendulum by Umberto Eco, who writes about the secret society. And they would do these chants for 3 days at one power spot. And the lady with the chalice would appear to this group of people in this northern town. And somehow that seems like another key, the chalice, to this whole coming new age. Does that make sense at all?
Oh, totally. And when you ask, what can we do?
Yeah.
I just always ask people to recognize that all of this myth and scripture and symbolism has an anatomical component. And I mean, going back to my book, God Making, in 1999, I was looking at the body as a mystical tool and comparing it with the Osiris device in Egypt. And I would look at the body and think, well, okay, if the Osiris device is a platform that resembles the Ark of the Covenant, because it is, and there's this pillar attached to it, and then there's these 2 tablets put on top, how would that have an anatomical component? Well, think about it this way. Let's say the lower 3 chakras are the box, the platform, and the spinal cord is the pillar of righteousness, or Aaron's rod, the rod of enlightenment. Let's say the 2 tablets of the law are not the 10 commandments, it's the 2 tablets, the 2 hemispheres of our brain. And then in the center of our brain, we've got this wonderful chalice called the pineal gland that's capable of producing these magnificent hormones and secretions that heal the body, bring bliss and joy, ultimately open portals in our consciousness to higher realms through the release of dimethyltryptamine and other hormones. What if the Ark is our body? What if we're to learn because the whole thing is the Ark is the throne for the Christ energy. Well, what if we all started thinking of our body itself? Each of us are that throne. Right. And that we individually must commit to making ourselves. What if it's you? What if it's you, Alan? What if it's you, Suzanne? What if it's me? Am I a worthy vessel, a throne for this frequency, this vibration to come into my body? That's really a nice way of thinking about how we participate in the manifestation of the true Ark.
Well, it reminds me of the Schwaller de Lubitz book, The Temple of Man, which is about the Luxor Temple being an embodiment, the temple right there reflected. Have you studied that book by Schwaller?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was just in London a few weeks ago and saw a first edition copy of that book. It was mouth-watering. And I have his whole library behind me. But yeah, what he really was ultimately speaking of was the ancient Egyptian technology of the heart and how we manifest it. And it's basically the secret, because it comes from Ptah, the original god of craftsmen, who would think something in his head and then feel it in his heart and manifest it. And that's the secret.
Well, part of that secret, Robert Lawler translated that book from French into English, and it was the first book that came out in Inner Traditions. It's the first book they ever published. And he actually learned French just to translate that book. And that book was given to him by the mother of Aurobindo, gave that book to Lawler when he was in India and said, translate this book. And he spent years translating that. But on page 5 or 6, there's a translation or a word by Schwaller that something like sound made the ear, the river makes the riverbank. So existence, in a sense, makes the divine creation that we are. We're reflections of that. We're vehicles of that creation. So I think as you're talking the ascension, we're coming back into this harmony with creation itself, is what I get the sense of.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, Alan. I think that also explains why so many millions of people are now going to Egypt. All of a sudden, it's like it's amazing what is happening there. There's something that's attracting them, and I think it's something to do with what you just said. It's something about to emerge in Egypt, and it could be the Ark, it could be something like that. An ancient technology and understanding and a wisdom that we need today that we have forgotten.
But I just spent a month in Egypt, September, all of September I spent, and it was, what was disappointing is that we weren't allowed to meditate and do the things we want to do, because I think the people in charge of that don't understand why those temples were built. So they put up barriers. So I don't know. It's just disappointing.
It also has to do, there was a well-known American shaman. She decided she was going to dance naked in the king's chamber.
Oh.
This was 7-8 years ago, and that was immediately followed by a Dutch couple who illegally climbed the pyramid, had sex on top of the pyramid, and videotaped it and put it on Instagram. And with that, the Egyptian people said, enough. That's enough of this nonsense. We're not doing anything. These are public spaces, and we're going to shut all this down. So I somewhat agree with them, because they are public spaces, and we can get into a real discussion about whether we're being good caretakers of them or not. But this is also kind of the thing as well, the abuse of these public spaces.
That's true. That's definitely true. But yeah, I agree. People are returning to Egypt in droves. Suzanne, what were you going to say?
What does isn't there 14 temples from Upper Egypt to Lower Egypt that does represent the temple of man somehow? Chakras or?
Yeah, I'm not as up on that as I used to be. That was something I think maybe Trumbulo or somebody was talking about that. So yeah, I really can't comment more on that.
Okay. Yeah, I've never been to Egypt and I'm dying to go, but I just, kind of refreshing my mind on the story behind it, with Isis and Osiris and Set and his body being, chopped up into 14 pieces and she put it back together in the golden phallus and all of that. Right. But I was just curious, like, if someone were to do a sojourn in Egypt, would they want to go to each of those 14 temples, or is there some kind of ascension, adventure they could have in Egypt because of the temples there along the Nile?
That's the entire basis for the tours I've been doing the past 20 years, is putting people on that ascension boat and walking them through the temples and showing them. Most of the people, when they're going to Egypt, tour leaders, you've got kind of the stones and bones crowd. They want to talk about how big the stones are, how do they move them, that kind of thing. But then myself, and I know others as well, are really into the spiritual mysteries, the resurrection and ascension mysteries, and studying that art, connecting with the energies of the temples and the majesty and the just utter mystery of so much of the imagery and the stories that go with it. It's absolutely just, any experience in Egypt is one that everybody should have to have or get to have in their lifetime.
Well, in the Temple of Abydos, I think you talked about, there's the ascension of Osiris, and he actually turns into like a bird. He actually starts to levitate out of his body after the phallus is put on the body by Isis. So it's interesting that ascension process is on the walls there. So, I mean, go ahead.
That is the whole purpose of all of the temples, is to reveal these ascension teachings and the mysteries. And when you put on the magic glasses and can see Egypt from that perspective, it really opens it wide open.
Yeah. Well, we love your passion, William. You are really doing the work. You're out there You're also going to be in Las Vegas next week at Stairway to the Stars, we're all going to be there, which is a fantastic gathering of people. And of course, Conscious Life. I'm sure you'll be there. Conscious Life Expo in LA.
I'm actually in Egypt in
Oh,
February. Yeah.
but are you coming to San Diego for the TCCHE in January?
I don't know. I was just on the phone with them or Zooming with them earlier. I hope to. I would love to do that. It's a wonderful event.
Well, either way, we'll see you in Sedona for sure, March 8th to the 10th, along with all these fantastic people that are coming. Anything you want to leave us with before, we sign off? Anything that comes?
Just stay excited. Don't let what's going on out there diminish your spirit, your light. Feed your light, and everything else is going to work itself out. We're participating in it by ultimately staying true to ourselves, feeding the light, and choosing love over fear. It really is that simple, and that's something all of us can make sure we're focused on right now.
Great. Suzanne, it's always fun to do these. Anything you want to say about the whole conference coming up?
Light always overcomes the darkness, and love always transcends fear. Coming together in these community gatherings to share our love and light allows for a powerful surge of that love light to travel throughout the globe, throughout the cosmos. And this is our intention, to activate the divine matrix for all, so we can create heaven on earth.
Right. Thank you. And everyone is invited to come to all these gatherings of community. Luxor Hotel, Las Vegas, November 10th, 11th, 12th, Conscious Life Expo in LA, and then Suzanne's incredible Sedona Ascension retreats in the beautiful, it is sort of a sacred place, Sedona.
Definitely.
When I was in Petra, it's like, they're the same red rocks. It's like I felt so at home in Petra. Have you been to Petra, William?
Oh, no, I have not. No.
Oh, you're gonna love it. It feels just it's that same red sandstone, and it's another Ascension city. Really, really is. I recommend it. All right, thank you. We had a lot of people watching online, which is really great, and a lot of beautiful comments. Thank you, Suzanne. William. How do people find you again?
My website is williamhenry.net.
williamhenry.net. Okay. And Suzanne Ross, Sedona Ascension Retreats. Get a ticket.
Thank you. Yes. You're invited. Come one, come all.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you. Bye, William.